Get in here.
What happened?
Tristan punched a kid in the face.
This Tristan?
May I go to my room now?
The other kid's parents won't press charges because they caught their kid in a lie. No, you can't go anywhere. You're gonna stand right there.
Tristan, your grandma made chicken curry.
No thanks.
I made this one. You can have it.
I said no!
Tristan! You can't tell me how to feel. I know what I saw.
Everything is always about you, huh?
I'll clean it up.
Where is all this anger coming from? I never raised you to put your hands on anyone. Get up, go to your room. You're making it worse.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. This is the podcast / YouTube channel where I, your host, Karen, a film critic and journalist, speak to film creatives around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today is one of my special interviews for the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival. You can hear me, but you can't see me. But I'm very happy to be joined by three lovely ladies today to discuss their film, Village Keeper. I have here on your extreme, this would be your what? Your left is writer and director Karen Chapman. Here in the center is Zahra Bentham, and here next to Zahra is actress Olunike Adeliyi. And I'm so happy to be joined by them. I'm a fan of yours. Like, I saw the Porter and I was very bummed that they did not. Listen, me as CDC, I have aught with CDC, okay? But we're here to discuss the film, and so Village Keeper is very much, I think, about reclamation of identity and of oneself, in particular for the lead character, Jean. She's a single mother, and she's struggling with guilt, grief, and I think self-isolation. And the word that keeps coming to my head is poverty, and not necessarily just financially, but emotionally. Like she's kept herself, she's impoverished herself emotionally because she deprives herself of like the simplest things. And I think a lot of that derives from guilt, you know. But I think, and also for the character of Tamika, played by Zahra, who's Jean's daughter, she's suffering with PTSDs very obviously, and also I think resentment against her mother for keeping secrets from their brother, because like Tamika has this, she knows the truth of things, like what happens in the past, but her younger brother does not, and so she carries this weight. So thank you ladies for joining me to discuss this film. Thank you so much.
Thank you for breaking it down like that.
That was so good.
You know, like, look what you did. That's amazing.
So first of all, Karen, I am Barbadian, so I'm originally from Barbados. I moved in 2009, and I live in Scarborough. So it's not very often as a worker, as a film critic and journalist, I get to speak to not only Black female filmmakers who make stories that are very much entrenched in West Indian identity and culture, but then break it down even further in Black female identity, and even set in a city that I'm living in, you know. So like, first of all, thank you for that, because I don't really get to see that part of my own heritage on screen. So thank you for that. And talk to me about what inspired you to make Village Keeper, because when I started watching the film, I couldn't figure out where the title Village Keeper came from, because I understand it in cultural context, you know. But in watching the film, I was like, who exactly is the Village Keeper? But then, you know, at home in the Caribbean, we'd say like, you know, like it takes a village to raise a child, you know. So then I realized that basically the Village Keeper is everyone around them. So talk to me first about just coming up with the concept for this film, and like just figuring out the execution of how you wanted things to go, and who your Village Keeper is in this film.
Thank you for the question. I've been ruminating on these themes in the film for a very long time. The duality of loving someone who hurts you, the rat race and trying to better your life and working so hard to do so that you forget to actually enjoy the life that you live today. mothers depleting themselves until there's nothing left. Just class, and what does it mean to go down in class? And what does your life look like? And worth and value, and where do we live? So all of these questions I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. And of course my mom, and watching her start a new life after leaving my dad, and watch her just pour so much love into us while she was hurting at the same time. And again, the capacity of mothers to hold so many things simultaneously that often contradict. And so I was just constantly trying to figure out ways for the film to feel so specific that it was familiar. And then in that specificity, just getting behind the eyes of all of our characters, so we can empathize. I think was a big challenge, and quite a journey. I always knew that I wanted Olu to play this role. I don't know if you know that, but you were who I was.
I know now.
Yeah, in my mind's eye, I was like,
crazy.
There's only one person, and I'd never written anything before this. Like, I came from documentary, and so I really wanted the film to be felt first, and I would just, in all of your capacity to do that by saying so little. The first 20 pages, the first 10 minutes of the film, there's no speech. And I noted that, sometimes we go through days without speaking at work. Sometimes we go through days without being held or touched or hugged. And so what does that look like when you don't have a soundboard for your resentment, and so you don't realize how harsh you're being, or the rage that you're carrying, because there's no mirror, there's no one to hold you to account except yourself. And so to carry that burden every day of holding a hurt, running away from something, I think all of those things, I just wanted to put all those complexities on screen and just see what happens.
Yeah, they're so, when you just said, it's so specific that it's familiar, and I think it's familiar across the board because it deals with a lot of themes that women in the Caribbean, but I think globally, are taught to deal with, and it begins from young, if they say, if a boy pulls your hair, if he teases you, he likes you. And that's conditioning from very early to accept mistreatment as an adult. And this film really does talk about that, because for Jean, she accepted mistreatment because that's what she was taught from not only observing her own mother, but that's what she was taught culturally. And it's not only mistreatment by people, but mistreatment of oneself. She was depriving herself of the simplest pleasures. And this comes later in the film, but it ties in because the scene where she's finally realizing I deserve. And it's not anything just deserve, anything specific, but she just deserves. I think the scene where she's eating the dessert, and she starts she starts to take piece, and then she puts it aside, that whole thing, I'm gonna save this for later. And then she goes back for another piece, and she's like, I'm gonna save the other piece. And she starts doing it, and we're just taught from very young, don't take the whole pie. Don't take the whole cake. Don't take up space. Don't do that. You just take a smart part. Don't be seen. Don't be too loud. Don't talk too loud. And then moving here in North America, don't speak too loud in your accent, your dialect. Tone it down. And so the film, I think, touches on all those things because Jean, she gets that from her own mother. Her mother tells her things don't think about it too hard. Don't do this. She wants to move on. Her mother but do you need to? And I'm but I saw it as she wants space for herself because the room you put her in, the bedroom, the one filled with all the boxes and all that, and she just wants to get out, but her mother doesn't see that. So I thought how the set design for the film is very interesting because of the spaces that you put Jean in. She's in a box constantly in the bedroom. So for you, Olunike, talk to me about working with Karen and figuring out who Jean would be, and the physicality of who Jean is because she's very reserved and she's very closed off, and she's a PSW, and I've noticed that she only wore like dark colored nursing outfits. And usually when we see them, like most PSWs wear like really bright colors, you know, like the pinks, and because they work such depressing jobs, they usually wear like bright colored nursing costumes. But I found like she always was in dark colors, and her hair was always tied up. So talk to me about working with Karen and figuring out who Jean would be for you.
Oh wow. Jean is an amalgamation of like a bunch of women in my family, right? That are caregivers themselves, or teachers. Is just always putting everybody before them. You know what I mean? Like that's literally what a caregiver is to do. And so you incorporate that into your own life, where you're not taking care of yourself first. You're always taking care of everybody else. And I could say that I'm also guilty of that. It's so funny when you talk about the boxes with Jean, because did you know that when I started filming that, I also had a whole bunch of boxes in my bedroom? Me and Olunike, yeah. Not to channel anything, it just happened.
Yeah.
Because I had recently moved back with my mom. So that was all put into the film, is because I was going through similar things as Beverly Jean. And I did not want to empty those boxes because I didn't want anything to do with staying there. I'm like, it's temporary. But as you wake up looking at these boxes every day, you realize you're kind of trapped. And so as Jean changed her life and started to put herself first, I also was doing the same thing. So Jean was healing me. But yeah, no, I mean, Karen and I spoke extensively about our own experiences, and how we wanted to incorporate those experiences into this film, because it gives it its authenticity. And so yeah, it was definitely a journey that I was living with the character, and rightfully so. Yeah. That's why what's feel can't unfeel. Right. So yeah.
That's when you say life imitates art, you know, and art imitates life. And I think that's actually really special, because I think for a lot of us, like sometimes life is very much feels like we're always unpacking something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like whether it's something emotionally damaging, or you're going through some trauma, you're finally like unpacking it and confronting it, or if you're at work and you have like to bottle up your feelings because again, like we can't be too loud, don't be too opinionated and all that. But then it's also in relationships where it's like you want to talk, you want to really say what you want to say, but then you're like, if I really say what I want to say, it's going to cause issues, so you bottle it up.
Yes.
And so like it's very much about, the film is very much about how we all are encouraged in a way to hold things inside rather than to let it out. And for you, Zahra, your character Tamika is very much the same, because just like Jean as a character is like closed in physically, like your character, even though she gets out more than Jean, because Jean goes from work to home, Zahra is able, she's go to school, she has friends, and she has this young guy that she's talking to, and she's physically more out than her mother, but emotionally I think she's kind of more closed in, because she has this trauma that even her mother doesn't recognize that she has.
Yeah.
You know, and she has this fear of blood, and she has this fear of like the closing spaces and the elevator, you know, like she chooses to go down the stairs rather than take the elevator. I don't know about you, but I live on the 17th floor. I know, but
it's good cardio.
Like, no, not 17 floors, no. But talk to me about your character, because Tamika again is very much she kind of reminds me of me in a little bit, because I would always want to do something and my mom would be like, do you have to do? You know, like, are you sure about this? Have you really thought about this? You know, my mother would be like, has the Spirit guided you to really think about this? You know, my mom is like an devout Christian, and she'd be like, are you sure this is what Jesus would want for you to do? Like, you know, that kind of thing. And like Jean is kind of like that. Like, I even put her in something like she's paranoid because she's afraid, but she's also, I think, very much this West Indian mother thing. Like, you know, like, watch who you're going around, you know, watch who you're touching, you know, like she wants to be someone who braids and does hair. And like in our culture, we're very, very, very careful about who we like touch our hair. You know, whose hair we touch it. So like I saw that, and it was like, to me, I'm like, Tamika, the character, doesn't understand that, but I fully understood Jean in that, because I was like, girl, you don't know nothing about this young boy. Like, he just coming up and you like, so talk to me about Tamika, because I was like, I
love your accent, man.
Oh, thank you. It's amazing. Thank you. But talk to me about Tamika for you, and like how you found her, and like how you and Karen worked out who Tamika would be.
Man, finding Tamika, I think there's so many parts of Tamika that are in me. It's funny, just a note, one of our friends, she came up to me yesterday and she said, you know, this is like the best compliment you can probably get. Like, she's like, you know, I was watching the film and I didn't see you. I saw Tamika. And I was like, oh, okay, great, I did my job. But aside from that, you know, Tamika, there are parts of me that are definitely in her. And she has a lot to say, but she holds a certain space of silence, and it's very loud. And so while she may seem quiet or may seem, you know, just observing, there's still so much in the background that's going on. I think, conversations we've had about just the approach on Tamika, I think she's like the walking eyes of like every scene.
She's a very observant young girl.
Yeah, she really is.
She's me. Like, people do. I call myself an introverted extrovert because I'm actually a very shy person.
It's called an ambivert.
That's right.
Someone just told me that
this
today.
way. But you think that I'm just an extrovert, but I have my moments where I just disappear.
Like there's moments where I just go very, very quiet, and I can go days without speaking. You know, but the entire time I'm not speaking, I'm observing. You know, like and people are always like, "Well, you talk so much." I'm like, yeah, because my energy is up here. But once that switch happens, like I can go like very quiet, and then I'm just watching. And they got Tamika's like that, you know, because she's able to connect with people easily, but she's also very observant and very careful about how she interacts with people. So like talking about the young guy again, I thought it was interesting that the first person's hair we see her braid is actually him rather than her mom's hair. So because like Jean's hair is not well kept, you know, and again that's a part of her like impoverishing herself of like care and emotion and emotional connection. So I was thinking, okay, because normally if you're like, for us, if you're learning how to braid hair or whatever, we usually practice on our family's hair.
That's true.
You know, when I first learned to cornrow hair, I practiced on my dolly's hair, then on my mom's hair. I shaved my mom's hair by accident, but that's a long story. And then on my sister's hair. And then when I started actually like braiding, like with kaneko and ayaki, that kind of stuff, again, I practiced on my family's hair, you know, my sister's hair, my friend's hair. And I thought it was interesting that the first person's hair that she braided was not her mom's hair. You know, and it was obvious that her mom's hair needed care, but that care wasn't given to her. So I want you both to answer, but Karen, I want you to talk about that first, because just visually, I know some people, again, outside the culture might not pick that up, but I picked it up because I was like, girl, how you got your mama's hair going around looking like that? But talk to me about that.
She won't sit. I feel I wanted to, and that was such a subtle note that was very intentional. Sometimes we carry hurt, and so when you touch someone, it activates something. So she understands the intimacy of getting her hair done, and she doesn't want it. She doesn't want it. She won't allow herself of that. She won't allow her those moments between her daughter. She won't allow. She won't. She's just holding so much. She's so fearful of the house of cards falling, and so she's just tight. She's wound. You know what I mean? And I think she does understand slowly that we think that she's living in a pocket and then no one knows what she's doing, but she realizes her daughter now too has these mental health issues as well. Like, you can't hide, and as much as you think you're hiding, you're just affecting everyone else around you. And so to watch her grow into someone who's able to pour into themselves and understand that the measure will never be equal if you just if you don't save yourself first, if you don't put the life jacket on. So watching her grow was fascinating. You know, watching it like happen live on screen and watching all of those moments. Coming from documentary, I was just like fascinated to see it work. You never know what's gonna work, right? And so to watch it working live, like it was hard for me to call cut sometimes because I could see that something was happening.
Absolutely.
That was special. If you notice, I didn't like
I noticed. Yeah.
But that's a documentarian in you, isn't it? You like to observe and see where the story goes, because that's how documentaries differ. Documentaries are continuing story, where as a fictional film, you got a beginning, middle, and then you got the end of the story. Punto final, it ends there. But documentaries, like the story continues after the film ends. So I think that's just you, like as a documentary, you're just a natural observer.
Very much,
right?
very much. That's so why I saw like so many like neighbors in Village. They're actual neighbors. Like we really wanted to feel like we were a part of the community, and they were also kind to us. The Campbell family was wonderful to us, and like in the film in all kinds of ways. But I think it just amplifies everything. Like it heightens the texture of the film.
Yeah.
And for you, Zahra, the hair. Talk to me about the hair and like how Tamika. I think I saw the hair as kind of again a metaphor for like the need for connection. Like she, like as you were saying, it made me think of how like Tamika needed that connection from someone. She needed that touch, like because I think they're both touch starved in a way, and so she couldn't get it from her mother, so she got it from the first person who offered her, because he came up to her and he approached her. So talk to me about that, and like just having hair as a metaphor, because again, like hair is so intimate for us, you know, touching people's hair is so intimate for us. So like talk to me about that for you.
Yeah, I think, you know, within that specific scene that you're talking about, I think Tamika has always known, or has known, that like her mom, she even says it, my mom's not the easiest to talk to. And so braiding hair is such an intimate thing that naturally, you know, even when we do go braid our hair, let's say at the salon, you know, we're talking our business. That just happens naturally. There's like an unsaid thing that happens between two people, or people around doing hair. And so, I Tamika knew, like, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to, no, like, mom's hard to talk to. She's not gonna open up about it. And even if she were, we'd probably end up in an argument. So I probably wouldn't even braid her hair. But yes, she was yearning for that connection, and homeboy was the first one that was just like, yeah, let's go, you know? Again, another really beautiful scene.
And Olunike, Jean again she's a conundrum, but again she's like all of these women in this film are very much women that I recognize from home, and in my community and in my family. And Jean is kind of an amalgamation of that, you know. I said like parts of her remind me of my mom, like the whole being a little bit paranoid, and sometimes I tell my mom, like, Mom, for a Christian you just kind of fearful. You need to be a bit more fearful, a little bit more fearless, you know. But then again, that's the thing, like as Black women we're taught again to doubt. You know, like just be a bit more fearful when we go out through the door. Like be a bit more observant, be a bit more fearful, and then careful. And I think there's a very distinct difference between being fearful and careful. And I think Jean doesn't know how to balance that, you know, because of the trauma and that she's suffered. And then she's not only raising a daughter, but she's raising a young son. And in Toronto, like people don't understand, like black young boys are in extreme danger. It may not seem so, but it is. Like if you pay attention to the news, if you talk to the people in your community, you know. So talk to me about Jean's inability to separate being fearful from being careful.
Well, her inability to separate being careful from being fearful is because she doesn't even know where she is. She doesn't. It's a way of life. It's an everyday journey for her to survive, right? And with my experience with being a part of the Black community, with watching my family members and that, it was always practice. It's like, you know, you have to be careful of who you hung out with. You have to be careful of how you acted around white folks, right? It was all based on survival. That was all coming from history of enslavement. And so that trauma just continues in the DNA from generation to generation. It's practices that we deem to be a good thing so that we are alive every day ends up becoming our own trauma. Really just a really bad practice, because now we're taking up less and less space in the world because of we don't know if literally we're gonna live or die, if we make these choices, because literally it can be life or death. I went through, and still going through, a very paranoid mom. She just doesn't trust anything, anyone. She even tells me, trust no one, not even yourself. And she doesn't know that she's in that trauma. She thinks that she's being careful. Everything is careful, a warning sign. But unfortunately, that is a part of trauma from years and years of microaggressions.
Yeah.
And so, do we blame ourselves from it when it's not ours? We didn't give it to we didn't give that to us, but it is our job to counter it, to make sure that it's so that you are productive in the world, and free. So now, is it a narrative that has been told to us and is a reality, or is it a narrative that we've agreed upon? Right. So we watch her go from the inheritance of that trauma to freeing up herself from that trauma.
Right. The film is very much about, first of all, recognizing that there is trauma, which is the most important thing. Recognizing that there is trauma and figuring out ways to deal with it. Because for each person, dealing with trauma is different, because we're all individual. And even if people experience the same traumatic situation, every person is going to react to it differently. Everyone is going to take it in differently. You know, and I find sometimes people don't understand that, you know, like just like we're in the same situation, yes, but my previous experiences, my personality, who I am as a person, is going to very much fundamentally affect the way that I perceive and receive that trauma. And in the family, it's interesting, and I think that's something that Karen does very well. It shows how in not just Gina, her two children, but her mom, how this trauma affects each of them very differently, and how they try to cope or suppress or mask the trauma, you know, in very, very different ways. Like we said, like for Jean, like she's depriving herself of things, you know. For Tamika, she's seeking out touch and connection from people, but she's afraid. She's physically open with people, but then she's emotionally closed off, you know. And then there's the son, who is beginning to mirror his father's image without even knowing it. And I think that that's something, while I was watching this film, it just made me think of how so much, I think when parents try to protect their kids so much, they end up doing more harm. Yes. For instance, in like not telling them the truth. He wanted to protect the son, Tristan, from the truth of his father. Jean doesn't reveal who his father really was, you know, that he was abusive and that he hurt her, you know, and in building up this idea in her son's head, she actually creates the distance, a resentment between them, because Tamika is very resentful of the fact that her brother is getting to live with this fantasy idea of their dad, while she's very aware of what the truth is, you know, and like she's just like, you're placing me in an impossible situation because I know the truth and I'm upholding this fallacy for you. And she's like, but this is doing me more harm than good. And it's also doing him hurt because he doesn't know the truth, right? And I think that's something that's so common in different cultures, and I think in homes where parents will say, I'm doing it to protect the kids, but I'm like, no, you're doing it to protect you. Yes. You know, it's about you not willing to confront the truth. So Karen, talk to me about that, because
shame.
It's the shame of, it's a shame for Jean of being in that situation for as long as she was, and you know, there's this survival guilt and being a victim, like there's that, but then sometimes it's not even necessarily abusive situations, it's just sometimes it's just some innocuous things, and parents say, oh, like, for instance, like if a parent is sick, you know, they don't tell the kids that they're sick because they think that's protecting the kids, but you're not giving the kids a chance to prepare themselves for what's coming, right? You know, like for instance, my grandmother had cancer and she didn't tell us. She had stage 5 cancer. She didn't tell us until it was almost too late. And she was like, "But what difference would it have made?" And we were like, "Lady, you
don't know.
Like you don't know. Like we don't exactly. We don't know what it could have changed because you didn't give us the opportunity to prepare and to think and to prepare ourselves." So talk to me about that, Karen, because I think it's very much about how hiding the truth is actually sometimes more damaging than what the truth is itself.
Definitely. Again, I'm just curious, to see if we could examine the silences that we have because we think we're protecting people. You know, the silences that we have for shame, and what were to happen if they were revealed, you know, and a lot of the times the perception is that again, you're protecting someone, but really you're not giving them the opportunity to love you anyway, you know. And so like I just wanted to blow it up. I just wanted to blow up every single fallacy, every single falsehood, every single secret, and I just wanted to see a family make it into the room, you know, like what would happen if they made it into the room, like what are the possibilities. And so it was just a beautiful journey to see, to watch this character grow, you know, watch this relationship deepen between mother-daughter, mother-grandmother, you know, and yeah, it was a privilege truly to steer the ship with these talented, like compassionate artists, truly.
What I love were all the stories that we revealed with each other, like our own lives, because that brought us together even more so. And it's so interesting because we had like a cast change with one of our talent, and I think the reason why it had to change because she wasn't willing to give up who she was and what she experienced. Because this was an opportunity to not do any schmacting, is what we call, right? Like pretend that you're not a part of it. Pretend that, because this is not just something that the Black community can take away with them. All communities can take something and they can see themselves in this because it's a human story, right? And so we had to recast because we needed somebody who was willing to be vulnerable and bring their own experiences or tell the truth to something, because that in the end that's what we're trying to do, is to try to affect a life, save a life, change a life. So you have to reveal, and I find the revealing of ourselves is how we were able to be authentic, tell the truth.
Yeah, and I think it's important because I think for me, like, I think the person I needed to save in the film was actually Tristan, because he was the youngest and he was the one living with a falsehood, you know. Everyone knew the truth, you know. Jean and Tamika and the grandmother knew the truth, but he's the only one who didn't know the truth. And in not knowing, he was developing, he was turning into someone that he couldn't stop himself from becoming, because he couldn't, you know, he had the memory of these things, but he didn't know what it was, because he'd been told, like, oh, you know, like, this was actually not what actually happened. Your dad was this great person. But it shows you how, again, like, environment impacts kids so much, you know, and like he was doing something subconsciously and not having any idea what the basis of it was. And
then the one who's the most in danger.
Yeah, and he's the youngest, and like and the other thing was and it wasn't just Jean or Tamika, because Tamika wanted to tell the truth, but it was the grandmother too. You know, the grandmom was like, she's and it's not that she's nonchalant, but it's, again, this is just how the conditioning is so ingrained, you know, where like now the younger generations have the term ride or die. You know, but before that it was, you know, like
who died? Me?
No, exactly. But that's the thing, right? That's the term they use now. But before it would have been like, you know, be a loyal woman and stuff. You know, to be loyal to your husband, to your man, to your father, whoever. But then it's like, what about being loyal to yourself, right? And so like the grandmother, she herself had to come to a realization that her not being truthful with Jean was causing a ripple effect. And that's how we talk about generational trauma, you know. That's how those things start, because the person that has the ability to change it doesn't, you know. And it's sometimes not because they can't say, it's just because they refuse to, because it's just easier, you know. So I want all three of you to talk about the grandmother, because she's because for a lot of us, like, our cultures, our family is very matriarchal, you know. We look up to the grandmothers a lot, especially when there isn't a grandfather around, and especially when we know who the grandfather was, and we was like, you good for nothing. So the only person we got is the grandmother. So I want you to talk about her and like how she plays into the story, into each of these characters, and like what she meant to each of these characters.
Maxine is a character study. Her grandma is a character study. It's so fascinating to me because she holds so much. On one hand, her coping mechanism is like kindness. It's regarded. The idea that I'm gonna give this food away, that's her raison d'etre. You know what I mean? At the same time, she is also holding things, but she's able to be a part of the community in a way that her daughter is too. We call it stush. Her daughter thinks she's better.
Oh yeah.
Just her bougie, as we say, Barbados.
Right? and the rigidness that she has, Rome doesn't live her life that way. And so to watch this older person who didn't necessarily go through therapy but found her way in another light was fascinating. It was. She holds so many things together. You could tell that she has a deep connection to her grandchildren in a way that perhaps she is like resentful of. So how do you hold? It's just the dualities of everything she was holding. Was something that I think I'm in awe, you know, of Maxine Simpson and her capacity to grow and change and adapt.
Yeah. I mean, that was well said. I guess just to add on to that, I think we going with Maxine, I think, was like the best decision. Just character first before like actor. You know, I think she said something really beautiful yesterday at the premiere. She said many beautiful things, but just being in a space of like, you know, giving, and like she actually is the grandma.
She totally is.
She like really is grandma. Which is so beautiful.
Like nature.
Very much
awesome.
so. But like also really cool.
Yeah.
It's also her car.
It's also her really real car.
That
yellow car's hers.
Oh.
Yeah.
We're like, okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, the relationship with grandma and Tamika, I think, again, it's like an unsaid thing. Like I think grandma really gets Tamika. Tamika gets grandma. You know, she did the scene where she comes in and she's about to get in trouble. I'm about to get in trouble with mom, and she gives me the forewarning, like, you know, don't, or like just like she's right over there. You know, like that unsaid thing, that bond.
She's not judgmental.
No, not at all. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
And that non-judgmental spirit comes from wisdom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's wisdom. She is the wisdom of the film, because she's lived so much life. She's gone through so many things, and she's freed up herself.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to help Beverly Jean do it quicker, and she's also seeing her grandbabies affected by it not being done quicker. And so grandma is the village keeper. She is the heart of the movie. Because I wish I could see my grandma like that, because my grandmother was very much like the matriarch, the like everybody in order, and it has trickled down even with me, the way I had started to raise my daughter, especially when it comes to school and everything. I was just like, I was like that hard-nosed iron lady. But as she got older and went off to college, I just,
And she's doing great.
She's doing great, and we're friends. Like we're friends now. You know, we hang out. We enjoy each other's company. But she doesn't stop to tell me about how tough I was as she was coming up, and I was like, oh, I thought it was a cool mom. She's like, no, right, no. She's like, no, you were determined not to be a statistic of being a single mom. But once I was safe, and you knew I would be, and independent, you just changed and became somebody new. And I'm like glad that I'm able to do that earlier than later in my life. So she can experience that. But the grandmother is wonderful, and just the Maxine was wonderful to work with, because she takes notes well, and she can play off of you well, because she's literally bringing in her own life. So she was a joy. to work with.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We have to wrap it, but thank you so much, ladies, for taking the time for speaking with me. And thank you for this film. And I'm sure it's going to be extremely well received, especially amongst the community. You know.
Yes.
But thank you so much for talking to me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. And you all look amazing. I just have to say-
Black girl magic.